learning Spanish is one of the best things I've ever done for myself as someone who's traveled to 25 countries over the last 2 years. But the thing is, when you're learning Spanish, whether that's through tutors or through school or through things like Duolingo or Rosetta Stone, you're not always learning the most functional ways to learn the language. So in this video, I thought it'd be interesting and hopefully useful to hear what someone who's spent the last 3 years learning Spanish, not a native speaker, some of the phrases that I thought were most valuable to learn early on and that I wish I had known when I first started speaking the language. So that's what we're gonna go through the video. Some of the phrases that I found super useful and helpful, and hopefully that does as well for you. So without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, welcome back to the Lifting Nomad. My name is Alex, and if you're new to the channel here, I travel and stay in shape, and everything on my channel is all about living a balanced lifestyle while still getting to enjoy the beautiful things in life like margarita, tequila, and the gym. If that sounds interesting, feel free to check out some of the other videos down below. But again, in this one, I want to talk about some of the earliest learning Spanish phrases that I went through when I was struggling to first learn Spanish. So first things first, let's talk about when you walk into a restaurant, when you walk into a cafe, to a hotel, maybe you're at a bar and you brush up against a beautiful little Latina and you're trying to say hello. How do greetings work in Spanish? Well, this is gonna be, like I said, the most elementary video of all time. And keep in mind as well, I am a native English speaker. That's what I grew up speaking, and I've learned Spanish the last 3 years through a combination of in-person classes, working with a tutor online a few times a week, and then also my own self-study. Now, if you are just starting out learning Spanish, I recommend starting with Preply. It is a direct tutor service that I've been using for over 2 years. And if you go online to preply.com and use the link below, you actually get a discount off your first class on the platform. And the best part about this service is you can go through and select whatever country you want to learn from. I have a Colombian tutor. Generally, Bogota, Colombia is considered the most proper Spanish, so I wanted to learn that. Then you can go through, choose your price range, choose their availability, meet with them for a trial session and see if that's someone you're going to enjoy learning from. And then you can schedule classes throughout the week in like weeks in advance to take these Spanish classes and get better and better and better as you improve in the language. 100% I recommend doing this. This is the best way I've found to learn. I do 2 to 3 one-hour classes a week, and within just like over 2 years, my Spanish has improved dramatically to the point that I can travel through anywhere in Latin America and be completely self-sufficient. Again, link below in the description. So although I'm not a native Spanish speaker, at this point my fluency is around a C1. So there may be things I mispronounce or things you don't agree with. This is just my experience being someone who started in English and learned Spanish along the way and what I found to be valuable. So first things first, saying hello is literally as simple as they make it look in the movies. Hola is directly hello. You don't really need to use anything else. Some of the things you'll hear in restaurants, bienvenidos, which is welcome, bienvenue in French, obviously very similar word, just means welcome. Typically following up with that, generally people when you walk into an establishment where you're being served, they'll either ask you one of two things. They'll say like, hola, ¿qué tal? Or hola, ¿cómo estás? Or ¿cómo están? Depending on how many people you are. And basically those both mean how are you. ¿Qué tal is a little less formal, and likely if it's a nicer place, you'll hear ¿cómo estás? Or ¿cómo están? Now, that's just a simple like how are yous. A lot of things you'll also hear while you're like walking down the street. Maybe you introduce yourself to someone brand new, or you're just walking into a coffee shop to order a coffee. You'll also hear things like buen dia. Now, buen dia in Spanish literally translates to good day, but most people use it before noon to mean something in the morning. So it's kind of just like good morning, good day, like, you know, it's just a greeting to say before noon, like good day. You'll also start to hear buenas tardes, buenas noches, or like more slang like buenas noches, or just simply buenas. And what these things mean, buenas tardes, good afternoon, buenas noches, good evening or good night. And buenas is basically just, it literally means good, but they would use it as a greeting sometime in the afternoon or sometime in the evening when you're welcoming someone or addressing someone in an establishment, or just meeting up with them, whether that's the first time or it's an old friend. You would just say like, hola, buenas. Simple as that. Now let's say you're walking down the street and you accidentally bump into someone, or you're on the dance floor, something like that. Commonly, you'll hear people say permiso, which is like if you're asking for permission, permiso, permission, to go like behind someone, or if like you don't want to bump into them, you can say permiso or con permiso. If you do end up bumping into them, you'll want to say excuse me, which is generally disculpe. You can also say things like perdón or perdóname or lo siento. Those are a little bit more formal. Perdóname, especially, and perdón is like what I would consider like pardon or pardon me in Spanish. Like you do say that in English, but it's not as common. Like usually it's just like excuse me or sorry. Perdóname you would use like more in a formal setting, but if you do use it that way, it's totally fine. Just people are gonna be like, okay, wow, he's speaking very formal Spanish. All right, now you've had your good time. You've been to the cafe, you've been to the bar, you've been to the restaurant, you've introduced yourself. At this point, I think it is a little bit more advanced to order in Spanish because you're asking for like to bring me something, or there's just a lot of different levels of how to the formality in Spanish. Like for instance, it's not uncommon for people to say dame un trago, dame un plato de pollo or something like that. That literally means dame is like bring me or give me, which in English seems very direct, but it's actually not that uncommon in Spanish. Things you might also hear in a restaurant, for instance, if you want to ask for the menu, there's basically two different ways that you'll hear that, like un menu, which is literally spelled the exact same way, which is funny enough that we say menu as if you would say like niño, but we actually say it the other way. And then menu in Spanish doesn't have that sound. What you also may hear is una carta, which is like a card in English, but it's a way to also mean menu. So if you ask for like, for instance, like la carta or el menú, they're going to give you the menu depending on the country you're in. It's just kind of like a slang thing. We don't really have the same thing in English. It's pretty much just always like a menu. Now this may be a little bit more complicated, and I always recommend learning the actual conjugations for these verbs if you are going to say these things. I'll leave a list of verbs down below in the description of things that I think you should learn the actual conjugations for before you try them. But here's an example of a few things that you might say in a restaurant that they're going to understand if you say. Yo voy is the conjugation of I am going to do something. So for instance, voy a comer, I am going to eat. Voy a tomar, I'm going to drink. Tomar literally means to take, but they use it in the context of voy a tomar, I am going to drink. So voy a comer un something, and then you can usually point to on the menu, voy a tomar, I'm going to drink. And then again, you can point to something on the menu, or at that point, if you're just like on Google Translate and trying to figure it out, you can just tell them what you're trying to drink or eat. Similarly, vamos is the conjugation for we as a plural are going to do something. So vamos a comer, we are going to eat. Vamos a tomar, we are going to drink. If you are trying to say like, you're in a restaurant and you're just trying to tell them like, we're not going to eat, we're just here for drinks, solo vamos a tomar, that would be very clear. And then I'm trying to keep this as simple and as like short as possible. Obviously there's a lot more nuance to it, but if you do say that, they're going to understand what you mean. Okay, now it's time for the bill. How do you go about doing that? Now, literally, if you do want to ask for the bill, you can just say la cuenta, por favor. Por favor means please, gracias means thank you. I'm hoping you at least know that if you are going to a Spanish-speaking country. La cuenta is the bill. It actually means the account, but the way they describe it is la cuenta is the bill for the table. So you could say la cuenta para la mesa, por favor. That's the bill for the table, please. Or just la cuenta, por favor y gracias. They're going to understand you totally fine. Now, if you do want to sound a little bit more local when you're asking to do that, you can say me cobras. Cobras is the you form of the verb cobrar, which is to charge. But when you say me cobras, what it literally translates to is charge me. And again, this is very direct. In English, it would kind of be like saying, hey, can I settle up? Like just like more of a slang way of saying, can I pay the bill? That they're going to understand you 100% of the time. Me cobras is like charge me and I will pay the bill. You've got the bill, maybe they're gonna ask you one of two things. They're gonna say usually efectivo, which is cash. If you're in a lot of these countries, like Argentina right now still pays a lot of cash. Most of the time it's not gonna be an issue. Or con tarjeta, which is with card. And then they'll usually say credito or debito, which like you hopefully can figure out, that's credit or debit. And then at that point, you could either answer con efectivo or con tarjeta. Okay, now you've paid the bill and it's time to leave the restaurant, leave the cafe, leave the grocery store, wherever you're going. How do you say goodbye? Now, it's funny enough, like in a lot of like movie shows and TVs, they act like adios is the most common phrase. And I was like, I was so excited to get down to Latin America and I'm like, everybody says adios. I'm just gonna keep saying adios to everyone. Not many people actually say adios. It's not really a common expression. There's a few ones you'll hear pretty common. They actually say ciao a lot. Which basically just means like bye. Adios is like kind of formal for like goodbye. You can also say, you'll hear things like nos vemos, which is like kind of see you later, basically, is what I would translate it to. It's a little informal, like nos vemos, like they'll say it like nos vemos, like they'll kind of slang it together. Usually you use this for people you already know. Some countries will actually use it, but it's a little bit informal. What I like to say is hasta luego, which literally means until then. But it's like just a really nice way to say like take care, like see you later, like a nice way, a nice formal way to say goodbye to someone. Really common in every country. You'll hear it, I think, the most probably in Mexico. But if you say hasta luego in like any country, they're gonna be like, okay, well, like that's a really nice thing to say when you're leaving a place. A couple other random phrases I was thinking of when I was making this video. For instance, if you wanted to say outside or inside, whether you're at a restaurant or whatever you're doing, afuera, afuera means outside, adentro means inside. So if you're at a restaurant and you're like trying to pick a table or something and you want to sit outside, you could just say afuera, por favor. Or do you want to sit inside, adentro, por favor. A couple other random things you'll see, cocktails. Tragos is kind of like another way to say drinks. Like you would think if you Google Translate drinks, it's probably going to say bebidas, which does mean drinks, but it's typically non-alcoholic. Tragos is like cocktails, but less formal. I don't know. I don't really understand the translation between the two, but a trago is an alcoholic beverage. A cocktail is usually a cocktail. A bebida is typically like a water or like a pop or a soda, something like that. But that's going to be the video. Hopefully this was useful to hear a little bit of my recommendation for new Spanish speakers, some of the phrases that I wish I knew early on. Obviously, this is not going to be a comprehensive list at all, but hopefully it gives you a little bit of context for some of the things you'll see when you're traveling through Latin America. If this video was useful, feel free to leave a like or comment in the section below. Always helps the algorithm. As always, my name is Alex. Welcome back to The Lifting Nomad. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.